Welcome to another episode of the Happiness on Tap podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories and practical insights for a happier, more fulfilling life. Today, we are thrilled to have a special guest who embodies resilience, creativity, and spiritual leadership. With nearly 2 decades of excellence in storytelling, author, independent care provider, and spiritual leader Antoinette Ladii Patterson joins us to share her remarkable journey and the impactful lessons she has learned along the way. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Leanne Herron, certified health and life coach and owner of Finding Resilience with Leanne. And you're listening to the Happiness on Tap podcast, your go-to podcast for uplifting conversations that stir the heart and ignite the spirit. Today, we have an incredible guest with us. Antoinette Ladii Patterson has made a significant mark as an author, an independent care provider, and spiritual leader. Welcome, Ladii. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited to hear your story. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this woman because she has had a life and has 7 books out. So, delving into the field of writing in 2005, Ladii has authored 7 distinguished books throughout her career. She debuted with That Which Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Stronger in 2010. 3 years later, she released If God Can Bring Me to It, He Can Bring Me Through It. Followed by Through God, She Made It in 2014. In 2015 and 2017, Miss Patterson expanded her repertoire with A Lifetime of Love, Part 1 and Part 2. She continued her literary journey with Shayla and Mike's Big Adventure in 2018, and most recently penned Testimony, How Being Obedient Changed Me in 2023. Drawing upon a deep propensity for creative media from a formative age, Miss Patterson is especially gifted by the success of her many books, which can be purchased online and at Barnes and Noble bookstores across the nation. Before disseminating her knowledge and wisdom, Miss Patterson allocated her professional time to healthcare settings. A former nursing assistant of 24 years, she received a certificate in medical billing and coding. She is also a licensed cosmetologist and independent care provider in the state of Ohio, earning her license in light of her desire to serve as a caretaker to her youngest daughter. So let's get started. Ladii, your life and work are truly inspiring. Let's start from the very beginning. Can you tell us what initially drew you to the film of writing in 2005?
Okay, so I initially began writing and journaling in 2004 after my youngest daughter, who was born with multiple disabilities in 2003. The doctor said that she would not make it in the NICU or up to her 4th or 5th birthday, but God saw differently, and she is now 20. I later published Through God, She Made It in 2014. It took a long time to create my daughter's book because I was working on other projects in between, and I wanted to make sure I had all the information, such as her diagnoses and other information.
That's amazing. It's quite,
Thank you.
I can understand how that was like your labor of love, truly your
Right.
labor of love. And you wanted to make sure that you included as much of her story to share with
Right.
others so that they can truly feel and see the strength that is around us, the blessings that are abundant, the
Yes.
belief that you had in in your daughter, you know, and
Right.
God and in everything. So it's inspiring. And I look forward to reading the book and learning more about the story as we get through this conversation.
Yes. Thank you.
So your debut book, That Which Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Stronger, set the stage for your remarkable career. What was the inspiration behind that powerful title?
Well, I began writing That Which Doesn't Kill Me Makes Me Stronger in 2008. So to keep in mind, I didn't have a title at that time, but after my dad passed, I created the title in 2010, and it was published actually in 2011 through Bukiman. From the time he became sick with cancer in early 2008 until he passed, I journaled over and over for 2 years how I felt about his illness and how I felt about after he passed. So in this project, I felt loneliness, grief, and an awakening spirit to create more titles.
Yeah, that's powerful. Having lost my mother-in-law to cancer and being with her daily, um, you know, it's I think the beauty of in what you're doing is sharing those stories, because I think it is so beautiful, because it becomes a book to help others.
Right.
You know, it helps others see that they're not alone. You're offering insight, things you went through, emotions you were feeling, struggles. And that just is so important to the human spirit.
Yes.
And we all need
Yes.
those kinds of stories in our life that we can relate to, that can show us strength and beauty in the world, even in our
Yes, I
darkest
agree.
times.
Yes, I agree.
One thing I always have told my daughter, and told her from the day we found out she was pregnant, I was like, write a book from today and journal about everything you go through as a parent, because
Yes.
they have that book, you know, what to expect when you're expecting. But then there's not a whole lot of books after that that go into childhood illnesses and school bullying and all those things that parents go through. I think the importance of doing that to be like a roadmap for that next
Right.
phase.
Right. Exactly. Because when it came to my daughter, I did not know that she was going to have multiple disabilities because I have three daughters, three older daughters. And so journaling and writing how I was feeling, what was going on during that time, it was really important because there are other people that I later found out that had children with autism, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, and developmental delay. And they actually thanked me for writing such a book and making them come out um, to tell their story about their loved one.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So I appreciate the fact that you have done that, and the amount of people that I know those books can help and touch,
Yes. Thank you.
because I think for us knowledge is power, and
Yes.
anything that we can do to put that information in front of people so they don't feel alone, or so that we give them a roadmap, is so important. That's something that's always been very important to me as a coach. In fact, this Friday, I'm doing a seminar called Choose Change, and it's
Mm.
bridging traditional medicine and alternative healthcare. Uh,
Okay.
I
Yes.
work a lot with acupuncturists, hypnotherapists, sound healers, um, because they were the people in my life who made the biggest impact when I was struggling with PTSD and brain fog and memory loss, to where my doctor just wanted to hand me a prescription for an antidepressant. And
Right. Yeah.
so I want to be able to be part of the solution as well, and be that roadmap to help people understand that there are alternatives out there if you know where to look.
That's right. I
So
agree.
again, you're truly inspiring.
Thank you.
So your books have a reoccurring theme of faith and resilience. Can you share how your spiritual journey has influenced your writing career?
My faith in God and staying focused helped my creativity as a writer throughout all of my 13 years as an author. With each title, I wanted consistency and to show my readers my character as an intentional writer. That which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. My debut of journaling, in which my later book was a spinoff of that title.
Yeah,
It's just having faith in God and being intentional and being consistent.
yeah. Intention is something, again, that's something I relate to, something I work with my clients on. Um, because when you go into things with intention, that's where you get that clarity and focus. But you definitely have to have faith. You have to have faith in yourself. You can't allow those voices to come in and knock you down or take you out of focus or derail you. And even, the fact that you journaled for years before releasing a book, um, it shows that consistency. It shows you're able to find that clarity. I listen to a lot of people. I don't know if you're aware that Matthew McConaughey, journaling was one of the things that he started very early in life. And so he talks a
Okay.
lot about revisiting those journals.
Yes.
And that's what became his book, Green Lights.
Okay.
So I think it's inspiring. I definitely struggle with journaling. I can type like a crazy person and share my story, but I
Yes.
struggle with pen to paper for journaling. That was a childhood thing that was kind of taken away from me as a child.
hmm
So I know I need to revisit it and start a journaling practice. So maybe you will be my inspiration.
I will say that journaling is therapeutic. Um, you just write and write and write, especially like I have been known to begin writing in the middle of the night. Like I can't sleep and I would get up and I would just write it because I don't want to forget about it. And it helps me when I go back and look at my journals. And it's really really therapeutic. It makes me feel a lot better when I go back and reread.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be very helpful with that
Mhm.
for sure. I always tell myself, God, if I just rewrote my dreams, wrote down my dreams, maybe that would make some sense, or I could start there with that
Right. That's
habit.
right.
So in 2015 and 2017, you published A Lifetime of Love, part one and part two. What was the inspiration behind those stories?
I'm sorry.
Okay, take a moment.
Don't. Nope.
Nope, not happening. That's okay. That's okay. We all have some pretty heavy stuff we carry and stuff that's
Right.
difficult to talk about.
Yes. So in 2015, I came up with A Lifetime of Love, and it was published through Fulton Books. And it's a love story about Jackie and Thomas, who were high school sweethearts. And then when they went to senior prom, they separated from each other, not intentionally. And then they found each other back in Paris. I'm a people watcher. And me and my husband, we've been married for 33 years. So I took me and his life experiences, and I took other people's experiences, and I became creative. And that's what made me write A Lifetime of Love parts 1. And then more people wanted to know what happened in part 2, or if there was more.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the part 2, because I didn't want anyone to read part 2 without knowing what happened in part 1. So I combined the book. So that's how that came about. A Lifetime of Love parts 1 and 2.
I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I am a series reader, and I love ending a book and wanting more. And
Yes.
I have been reading a series that's 26 books long, and having to
Oh,
wait for the next book to come out is so exciting. Um,
yes.
and then I did get the blessing of actually getting to have that author as a guest on my podcast, and that was like my dream come true because I had followed her for so long, and you develop this like you know them, you know.
Right. Yes.
Um, and I got to the very last book in the series, and it took me probably a year and a half to read the last book because I didn't want it to end.
Right. Yes.
I
And
didn't want it to end.
the books that I write are, I wanted them all to be easy reads. There's nothing wrong with a thick book, but I found that when they are thick, you tend to get wrapped up in something else that is going on in your life, and you'll put the book down, and then it'd be a week or two later and you'd be like, oh yeah, I meant to finish reading, or so my intentions are to have books that have easy reads to help out the readers.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Thank you.
You have worn many hats professionally, from being a nursing assistant, thank you for that, a licensed cosmetologist, an independent care provider. How have those roles shaped your perspective on life and storytelling?
Well, wearing many hats stemmed from a young child who stood in their mother's kitchen. That was me. And I had an imagination that you could never, like, you wouldn't believe. But I wanted to be in my own bubble, my own space. And so everything that I wanted to be in the kitchen, my goal was to, when I became an adult, is to be those things and then some. But believe it or not, being an author was not one of my imaginations.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a teacher, being an actor, being a dancer, I found that writing and journaling and doing it all did add up to what I was being when I was a child in my mama's kitchen. Because I didn't go outside and play. I was talking to the dolls and I had my own imagination. So I had a creative mind back then, and I just brought it out of me as I became an adult.
And nursing, where did that come from?
The nursing part came from, I had dolls that I was the doctor. So I was taking care of the dolls, and so I didn't realize that I was going to be a nursing assistant just from taking care of my dolls. So
Mm-hmm.
that just I was, when I tell you I was everything, I was an actress. I was on the stage just bowing and doing, and yes. So, but I believe that God was preparing me for my daughter.
Yeah, those
Yes.
experiences absolutely were probably so vital in her care because
Yes.
you learned the things that you needed to know to provide her the best care.
That is correct. Yes.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I think about my grandson, and we watch he's 7. His creativity is off the charts. Like I could just sit and watch him for hours. His favorite word is animatronic. So he builds things like werewolves, and it's got like a box and a laundry basket and a toaster. And I mean, he'll just find anything in the house and build this giant werewolf, and he makes it mobile so he can move it and he can push it around the house. And I'm like, man, I just don't remember having that level of creativity because I was an outside child.
Okay. Hmm.
He's an inside child for the most part. And so seeing his creativity and hearing your story uh, gives me thought to where his future can really go with his beautiful creativity in his mind.
Yes. And I watch my two grandchildren and they run around and they're doing that same thing. And I laugh because they bring me back to that little girl in the kitchen. And when their parents is like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Leave them babies alone because you don't know where, where they are in their imagination." And that's kind of where I got Shayla and Mike's Big Adventure, because that's a children's book.
Okay.
And Shayla and Mike went on an adventure in their head, in their imagination rather. And the one little girl, Shayla, has autism. So what I did was I combined my grandchildren and my youngest daughter to create Shayla and Mike's Big Adventure. And shout out to my husband, who is my co-author. So that's how Shayla and Mike Big Adventure came to play.
I think that's wonderful. Do you have more aspirations to do more children's books?
I do. Me and my husband is actually working on a spinoff, you want to say, or a part two, or a Shayla Mike something,
Mm-hmm.
to keep it going, to keep the imagination going, because on the pages, after the parent read it or after the child read it, there are pages in the book where they can take crayons or whatever and they can write out what their imagination says about what was read or what they had read. So yes, me and my husband is actually working on more of those.
How exciting. I think that's so important.
Thank you.
They have this abundance of creativity and just thought that isn't controlled by what they see. And as much as we as adults are affected, the news or what's going on in the
Yes.
world really can harm our creativity.
Yes.
And so when you take a child, just with anything, you want to bottle their energy, you want to bottle their creativity, just so that you can sip off it for a few minutes to feel that
Yes.
that joy, that curiosity. So yeah, please do. I think it is so important for kids to have that outlet.
I agree.
My husband is a huge reader. He could read 24 hours a day if he was allowed to. If he didn't have to go to work, he'd be reading a book. And I'm thankful to him for that because it got me reading. Um,
Okay.
I was never a huge reader growing up. Like I said, I was very much an outdoor kid, like go ride bikes, go chase lizards. I was a tomboy with my older brother. Um, I wanted to ride motorcycles and get dirty and play in the dirt. And I didn't really have dolls. I had like army men and Star Wars figures. And um,
Yeah,
so he helped me develop that love for reading.
that's awesome.
And it was just this past weekend, over the long holiday weekend, we went camping, that I took that book and finished it. And it was
That's
so hard
great.
for me because, again, I just didn't want to finish it.
You wanted to be doing the outdoorsy stuff.
Yeah. And I didn't want the story to end because I knew it was the
Right.
last book in the series. And I was like, I don't want this to end. This has been such a big part of my life for like 7 years. I don't want it to end, but I understand, uh, that's a long series for an author.
That is, yes.
So let's talk about your most recent book and your upcoming book signing. Very exciting. So you recently released the book titled Testimony: How Being Obedient Changed Me. Can you discuss the main themes of this book, which include your thoughts, your journaling about your many tests in life, and what inspired you to write this book?
With hashtag testimony, how being obedient changed me. That was the spinoff of that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I started the only difference between that which doesn't change me makes me strong, which doesn't let me start that over. That which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. The difference between that book and testimony, how being obedient changed me, is I started each chapter with Dear Diary, the infamous Dear Diary, and then I added scripture as reference to get a better understanding of what I felt and what the Word of God says. So testimony helps those who are going through similar things or is going through similar things or have gone through similar things. So my goal was to inspire and encourage everyone that all you need to do is have obedience, and God will handle the rest, because my motto is, without a test, you have no testimony.
Beautiful.
So thank you.
That one's going to be very powerful. And I think they're all very powerful stories because they're yours. They're your experiences and how you overcame, how you were resilient, how you had faith, how um, it's something that I think people tend to give up very easily
Right.
or blame something other than taking responsibility and finding the positive and just giving that resilience, having that resilience.
And having accountability as well. Um, what I will say is that I have not always been that way. It took the different struggles that I have gone through, and that's just in testimony, that's just a snippet of
Sure.
the things that I have gone through. But when I went through certain things and God saw me through them, that's when I realized that, oh, that's just a test. And then when you get through it, then it becomes a testimony. So that's where my thought process and my creativity of this particular book came into play. And I wanted to show it to you.
Beautiful, beautiful
Thank
cover.
you. Thank you.
I love it. I told you briefly, I had some pretty bad struggles with PTSD and brain fog and memory loss. And that was a point in my life for the first time ever, and this was only a few years ago, that I felt I had lost my resilience
Okay.
because I've always been very resilient in the face of some of the worst traumas that we go through. I went through some pretty bad traumas with my daughter when she was 7. And I never treated for it. I never went into therapy. I never did any of that because I was always raised, your focus is just keep going, take care of everybody else, do what you got to do. Nobody ever talked to me about the importance of therapy and self-care.
Yes.
I didn't even honestly know those words. They really weren't in my dictionary of life because my focus was raising my children, having a good job, providing benefits, having a roof over their head. Um, those were my focus. And then here we are in 2019 and 2020, and I had a trauma that took me back to that moment in
Mm-hmm.
time when I went through trauma when my daughter was 7. And I was reliving every single day like I did back then.
Mm-hmm.
And no one had ever explained to me like how the body hangs on to trauma
Right.
and that
Right.
it can just rear its ugly little head at any point in time and you don't even see it coming. Um, and it knocked me down. It knocked me down so hard I had to quit my job.
Mm.
I was afraid to leave the house, and I had never been that person. I used to go running down the ditch bank with headphones in by myself like a crazy person. I never had
Aw.
fear.
Yeah.
And this trauma reached deep down inside me and brought up all this fear and anger and hatred and darkness. And that was not me.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like it. And I had to find my way through it.
That's right.
And so I can really relate to the test and the testimony. And
Amen.
so then after I went through it, like I said, through help with working with alternative medicine practitioners, getting into therapy, doing the work, I wanted to turn that in. Like I said, I want to be part of the solution for somebody else. I want
That's
to
right.
be that roadmap to say, I went through overwhelm. I went through trauma. I went through um, intimacy issues in my marriage. I went through all these things, but these are the things that make me the woman that I am today. These are the things that make me the coach I am today so that I can help you see the light.
Yes.
And
You,
so I was so
you,
excited for this conversation with you for that reason.
thank you. Thank you. You know, when we were growing up, therapy was not a conversation at grandma's house or auntie house or no one. Um, you have your grandmothers who, oh, pray. And you do pray, but you also need, I believe that God put these doctors, these therapists, these coach into play to help us out on top of prayer. So now that I know what I know, if anyone needs therapy or they're going through something, I first would tell you to pray, but also, you know, seek some counseling. Seek it. Don't let it be your all in all, but pray and seek some help. Because, like I said, that wasn't a conversation when you're younger, growing up.
Not at
Yeah,
all. I didn't know nothing about it.
nothing.
Like you
Yes.
said, it wasn't conversation at the table with my aunts. And I grew up in a
Mhm.
large family. I had 13 aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
And I don't ever remember hearing any even stories or witnessing one of those relatives going through something and getting help. You just didn't,
Right.
it wasn't discussed.
It wasn't. No.
And so I'm very much a proponent of therapy and of seeking counsel. Get a coach,
Mhm.
get a mentor, talk to people at your church. There's always somebody that can help you.
Right. I agree.
So congratulations on your upcoming book signing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I know you briefly mentioned to me that getting into a library is a little more difficult. So share that with our listeners.
Well, the event is November 23rd and it's at the Garfield Heights Library. It's very difficult to get into a library. I remember when I first started being a published author, trying to get into libraries and even in places like Barnes and Nobles and things. And as an independent author, it can be trying. It's really hard to do, but it's very exciting to be able to be the author speaking and doing a Q&A at the library finally. And I'm so excited about it. So yeah, it can be difficult, but it can happen. with
Mm-hmm.
prayer and being intentional and being positive and just keep going.
Persistence.
Yes.
What did you do for other book signings? If if you like had trouble getting into, say, a Barnes and Noble, so would you find just another location and it was kind of up to you to get the word out? And
I did. I had to go to different bookstores. Um and it also depends on how you publish your book. So that was going to be my next thing to talk about, as far as inspiring other authors. So I'm just going to go ahead and just say,
let's do it.
um, okay. So you put God first, you dig deep into your creativity and your imagination. And being an independent author can be hard because a lot of bookstores do not want an independent author, their books on their shelves or doing any events. And I found that out later. So what I did was I published through Ingram. Ingram is the distribution of Barnes and Nobles and different bookstores because the books become returnable. So just for saying you got a book event, book signing, and you wasn't able to sell all of your books, the bookstore is able to return the books to the distribution company and no one loses. So that's very important. Independent authors, sometimes they want to go through Amazon, and that's fine. But when you have to get an editing team going. You have to edit, which I did not know that in the beginning of being a published author, but I know now that you must get your book edited and get it into a distribution of Ingram because that helps out a lot.
Do you have any other tips or advice? I'm hoping someday to write a book, and I'm always looking for advice and suggestions so that I'm not trying to recreate the wheel. And there is a lot of people that talk about just publishing up to Amazon and
Yeah, yeah. Like I said before, I'm a people watcher, so I'm always watching. I have this T-shirt that says something like, "Be careful, I'm a writer," because I, I will never put a person's name in it, but I am always watching. I feel like you have to be authentic, you have to be creative, you have to have a great imagination, you have to be persistent and consistent, intentional in what you're doing, and where you publish is very important. If you can get a traditional publisher, which is the big publishing companies, you need to have a publicist. Um, Make sure your book is edited, your manuscript is edited before being published. That is important. Your cover page, it needs to have some pop to it before, like I said before with my book, it didn't have a title. So I was just writing, and then I later made my title. So you need to have a title that's just going to jump out to the readers. And when you're doing an author event, make sure your genre is that particular book. Don't be a romance novel and you got a group of people that's inspirational. So I learned a lot in these 13 years. It just took me to 2022 when I decided that I wanted to be an author as a career. And then that's when I knew that I needed a team, public relations, publicist, you need your personal assistant, your marketing and things like that. So it took all those years, and it's definitely a blessing to put together a team. And if you have the funds for it to do such a thing, yes.
well, if you haven't thought about it, I'm going to make a suggestion because me from the outside, who's, an aspiring writer. It may happen someday. Um, one thing I've learned about being in the knowledge industry is the value of sharing what we know, the value of sharing what we've learned. And so you've done that through your stories. But have you ever thought about doing that for this, for these, this roadmap for other authors? You could do short videos, publish them up to YouTube. You could write a short ebook just to lay out those things because that's value.
Right. I do have a podcast. It's called Let's Talk with Ladii. I just finished my season 2. We're working on doing my season 3 sometime next year. I do content where I would talk about different things and have it post onto my social media. So I do those things. Sometimes I'll have a thought. So I've been really working on it and continuously doing that to help other people with whatever that just comes to my mind, because once again, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Yes.
Absolutely. But, keep it at the back of your head. That is a way to, we call it passive income,
Okay.
and books are passive income. You create it, you put it out there, and it continues to sell. Ebooks are great for that as well. But doing like a short workshop for other authors or people who are, thinking about writing a book, I think could really be somewhere where your years of experience and knowledge and expertise and what you've learned and how you learned it could be really valuable.
Thank you. I am going to take that into consideration and call my publicist. And we may just work on that. And yeah, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Um, thank you so much for joining me today, Ladii. Your journey is truly inspiring. Uh, and we are grateful for the insights you've shared here. I hope I have planted a little bit of a seed to give you ideas of how you can continue to do that, because I think you have a lot to continue to share. To all our listeners, make sure you check out Lady Patterson's books online and at Barnes and Noble bookstores. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Happiness on Tap podcast. Stay tuned for more conversations, and remember to keep the happiness flowing in your life. Thank you again, Ladii. I appreciate you so much.
Thank
This was
you.
such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.